Hello, and welcome to the Focusing Way podcast, available on iTunes and Stitcher. I'm your host, David Battistella. Today on the Focusing Way podcast, our guest is Barbara McGavin. Barbara specializes in using focusing with emotional overwhelm, self-criticism, and creativity. Barbara McGavin's greatest joy is exploring the frontiers of the focusing process, what it is, and how it can be applied in daily life. Since 1991, she's been developing inner relationship focusing with Ann Weiser Cornell. Since 1994, the two of them have been exploring focusing in some of the most difficult areas of life. Treasure Maps to the Soul has grown out of this and is the core of Barbara's own focusing practice. Barbara's other great interest is in how focusing can be used in the creative arts. She has developed a process called From Spark to Beacon to help people develop and release their creative capacities. Barbara has been practicing focusing since 1983. In the 1980s, she helped found the British Focusing Network and the British Focusing Teachers Association. She is a certifying coordinator for the Focusing Institute, as well as an accrediting mentor for the British Focusing Teachers Association. Her background is in humanistic psychology, teaching, fine art, and graphic design. And now, part 2 of our conversation with Barbara McGavin. How would you even be able to approach something like untangling without focusing?
You couldn't, I don't think. Well, let me see. Well, yes and no. Focusing is a natural human process, and Jean developed a way of being able to articulate it, to be able to show it to people so that people who weren't doing it already could get it and learn it and develop it themselves. So in that way, like when you're a kid, you can run, but to run really, really fast, you probably need a coach to really be able to be Olympic kind of style. So there is a way in which, yes, you might sort of manage to untangle something in your life, but it would be probably kind of hit and miss. And what we do is we offer a support structure or a cognitive structure or an emotional structure that will help you be able to turn towards those places that are really, really stuck. And you get, when you're inside them, your perspective is bound by the tangle itself. So being able to come into relationship with a tangle is really hard. Really hard. It might not be impossible, but it's really, really, really hard. You might be able to do it through meditation. I don't know. But there aren't that many ways of being able to get to a point where you can actually have that whole situation without being caught up and bound by its parameters. Does that make sense?
Yes, because I've experienced exactly what you're speaking about, and I can say with absolute certainty that within the environment you and Anne create, it gives a person every possible opportunity and structure and support system and the language to confront, to be with, to get to know any of these kind of things, And each time we deepen that process, we come out of it and carry forward in a new way, in a fresh way, as our new self, as a rediscovered self. And that I just wanted to ask a little bit about Jean's philosophy, and if you could just talk a little more about that sort of carrying forward energy and what that means and how that
Sure.
affects things. Yeah.
I'll do my best. Because Jean's philosophy is so deep and so subtle. He calls it the philosophy of the implicit. And he means implicit in a very specific way, which is something that you can sense but does not yet have explicit form. So he's really pointing to what some people call the liminal edge, where you can sense it, you know it's there, but it as yet does not have form. So when it doesn't have form, it is still open. So as soon as something has form, it has the potential for being set. And a lot of what we believe about ourselves is kind of set. In order for something to be able to shift, we have to go to that liminal edge, that place that is not yet symbolized. It's not yet in words, it's not yet in pictures, it's not yet in movement or in behavior. It's open. And so that's really what focusing is about going to that liminal edge and allowing it to reconstellate, reshift, to be directly sensed.
Which sort of leads to finding those places within you that are natural and correct, and as there's a sense of rightness that comes with discovering those things.
Yeah, and discovering the space where those things can form. Because they aren't there yet. The explicit stuff is there, but the implicit is it's not like we have furniture inside. It's not like we have little people, little homunculus running around inside us. We have ongoing experiencing that is moment by moment becoming explicit. So we have this edge available, can be available to us if we turn towards it. Most of the time we don't live at that level, but it's potentially available to us at any moment. Can turn right at this moment. Any of us, all of us, could pause and sense inwardly and notice what is not yet formed, but we can sense. It's where our words come from. So you ask me these questions, and I have to drop down to there to come up with fresh words that fit what a kind of a sense of what I'm trying to say.
As you're saying that, and I'm thinking about everything I've been sort of developing with living in a focusing way and bringing focusing into the sort of the day to day and moment to moment, and of course I'm not talking about sort of the deeper work that we would do in entanglement or treasure maps work or our regular focusing sessions, but just to bring a wider awareness out into our everyday moments and experiences, and sort of confronting everything that's coming at us in this world that we're exposed to and we live in. But the experience of just experiencing other people sort of in a focusing way. Can you talk about how focusing has sort of enriched your other relationships and just your life generally?
Oh, wow. That's a nice biggie. Okay, so I'm doing the dropping down thing here. Yeah, like I can sense like three different strands here. One is a kind of a strand about um, there's a kind of way of really being open to a bodily responsiveness to my environment, we could say, and really being able to savor that in a much finer way. So I feel more responsive to things like art or music or landscape or just being in a particular environment, walking through the city, whatever. And just there's a kind of a more aware of a kind of resonance with all of that. So that's one thread. Another thread is about, my relationships with people. There's a way in which I can get a sense of people in a finer way, more finely textured, that isn't about, my thoughts about those people, but it's a more of a bodily response that is also not like an emotional reaction to people, though that happens too. But there's a more of an appreciation of this more subtle level. I kind of feel it like between my fingers, like being able to feel fabric or something. It's finer textured, and so I get that feel of a person more than my thoughts about them or emotional reactions to them. And then there's in my intimate relationships, with my husband, and my focusing partners, but with my husband particularly, we do focusing, like we turn to each other and say, I have a something. I need, can you do some listening? So it has brought all of that into my life, which is, I can't tell you how incredibly precious that is, to have that in my life, to have my, the love of my life, my intimate partner, also my best focusing partner, and somebody I can turn to at any point, any time, any time of the day or night. It's like, I have a something, honey. Can you listen for me? And it's a delight. It's fabulous. And so focusing works with friends. Focusing works with my best friends. Focusing works with my husband. So it's and that, I think, is amazing. I don't have to be in therapy to do super deep work. And I own it. It's like it's mine. Focusing, that's one of the things that happened, that's why I wanted to learn it so many years ago, was I was pretty fed up with therapy at that point. And having something that I could learn, that I could do myself, and that was going to be mine, I was in charge of it. And I still am. I'm still in charge of my own focusing. Whoever I'm doing it with, I'm still in charge of my own process. It's mine. I get to own it. And that's really precious.
Something we love to we name as the empowered focuser.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's kind of what we want to create, is empowered people who have the ability to focus and take care of themselves.
Yeah, the ability to really be able to know their own inner world, their own inner landscape, and feel confident being in there, feel confident being in their own skin in the world. in interaction with others. It's amazing. It's wonderful.
It is.
Yeah.
And this whole time we've been speaking, you've just beautifully sort of dropped into the body. And I really sort of am very curious to hear your thought or your feeling, your bodily sense of what that really is, discovering or rediscovering the body, and what that body's wisdom can bring. Can you share?
Yeah, let me see. Takes what comes as I sense in. What comes is remembering how disconnected I was from myself when I first discovered focusing. How I was so lost and in a lot of inner pain, but didn't really know it and didn't know how to. I was like trying to cope or deal with or fix or manipulate. And how it is now is when it hurts, and I'm okay. I don't have to disconnect myself from myself. I can stay whole even when something inside me is hurting. And that's really special. I don't have to be afraid of anything inside of me. I can turn towards, I can sense, I can be there just as it is, really directly experiencing the whole of my experiencing without changing anything. It's in a way it's like super simple and very challenging sometimes, but absolutely wonderful. The aliveness in that is amazing.
I can
And
feel that.
yeah,
Yeah, and that's something
yeah,
we can experience in focusing is that it's that edge that you mentioned earlier that even just sitting and listening, there's an aliveness to the other that sort of activates your own body and your own aliveness.
yeah.
And there's something mysterious and something we know to be beautiful in a way.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
it really that really points to for me the whole thing about focusing partnership and about how amazing um, it is to have a true peer relationship where both people um, are um, sensing each other. It's very mutual, and that each person is their own empowered focuser, but also to really, it it really gives you the opportunity to to be there for somebody else in a way which really also in a way helps you be empowered.
Just going back to just this idea of sort of discovering all the wisdom that's always been inside you that you never knew you had, and sort of focusing kind of being the doorway to that. Does that does that feel right or sound?
Hmm. It's I mean it's one way of being able to, yeah, you could put it that way. There is a yeah, people do talk about like a bodily wisdom and that kind of thing. Um how can I put it? Um, there is a way in which when something shifts, it's like I come into a kind of alignment with this living forward. And it's not just my personal living forward, it's like I come into alignment with the living forward of a whole situation, which includes other people. So it's actually really complex. It's not just I have a directionality and I'm going in that direction. It's that my whole situation has a directionality, and everything can start to align in that, and then there is a kind of movement that emerges, that occurs.
Yeah, that whole like the way I'm hearing that is that your own alignment sort of affects the whole of that situation. So as that comes into and fits into the right piece of the puzzle, everything else around that situation finds its spot as well.
It that it's more almost the other way around. It's really hard to put this particular thing into words, because that way of seeing it is like cuts things up into pieces. Whereas when you get a felt sense of the whole thing, it's not cut up into pieces. And I don't know how to explain. I really don't know. I wish I knew how to explain.
No, sometimes words,
Yeah.
it's not about words. And that's another
Yeah.
beautiful thing about focusing is the knowing is kind of there. For a period of time, I had a knowing that sort of showed up in my body, which I sort of called the knowing line. And it was my body saying, okay, when this point, and that point sort of light up, that's, we're telling you, you know, the body is telling you that's the, and I came to name that as the knowing line. And I go, oh, there's the knowing line. So I'm in the right direction here. And that shifts and changes and evolves and changes because we're constantly changing. So, but there's also things that are the beauty of when no words need to be spoken, when events just kind of unfold. And
Yeah. One of the concepts that is so fundamental from Jean for me is this whole concept of situation. So that a situation is everything that is relevant to a particular situation. Like, so my relationship with my daughter, everything that is involved with that is part of the situation. It's not just what's happening between me and my daughter. It's the whole situation of my, my marriage is somehow in there, and where we live is, and, what's going on for her in her life. And so the whole situation is involved. And I can get a felt sense of that. And my felt sense, when it gels, will help the situation to shift.
Yeah.
Without my doing anything, without necessarily having to do something like a particular something. My living in the situation will be different. And my living in the situation changes the situation. And a changed situation means that she has to live differently too. Because she's part of that situation. And it means that what's happening with John will also be different, because I am a different being. I have a different body living in an already changed situation.
I understand that. I really, Yeah, I sense that.
Mm-hmm.
I feel that. That resonates with me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe we could just take a sensing moment if there's something
Yeah.
else here. Um,
Yeah. I want to just point to joy.
mm,
It can be really, a lot of my work is seems to be very focused on what's painful, what's difficult. But I really want to also point to how incredibly powerful and how much joy arises in in this process and in the living that arises out of this process.
mm,
A kind of radiance that is very spontaneous, just like, whoa, I didn't expect that. And
mm.
how full of surprises this process is.
Yeah. That's reminding me how we often invite joy and good feelings within focusing to be there just as fully as
Mm-hmm.
those feelings want to be there,
Yeah.
because they do fill us.
Yeah. When they come to really welcome what what has shifted, what has changed, what feels more alive now. And it's really all about coming alive. For me, focusing is really about coming alive.
Mm. Barbara McGavin, thank you so much for sharing.
It's been a pleasure. Truly. Thank you, David, for inviting me.
You've been listening to the Focusing Way podcast, available on iTunes and Stitcher. Please check out our website, thefocusingway.com.